Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his massive warship and looked at the star map before him. The crystal walls of his ship glowed with soft blue light as thousands of stars marked the territory of the Zephyrian Collective. For 3,000 years his people had ruled this part of space, and no one had ever been strong enough to stop them. The newest target was marked with a red dot on the map, a small blue world that circled around a yellow star. The humans who lived there had just started to travel beyond their own moon. They were weak and young compared to the mighty collective. Vextar smiled as he thought about how easy this conquest would be. Captain Jake Morrison walked across the bridge of the USS Defiance and felt the weight of the entire human race on his shoulders. The alien message had arrived 6 months ago, and it was simple and clear. The Zephyrian Collective demanded that Earth surrender immediately, or they would destroy every human city from orbit. The aliens gave them 72 hours to decide. Morrison had watched that message so many times he knew every word by heart. The alien who spoke looked like a tall, crystal creature with glowing eyes. His voice was cold and without any emotion. When he told humanity that resistance was pointless. The collective had destroyed hundreds of worlds, and Earth would just be another easy victory. But Morrison knew something the aliens did not know. He had access to files marked with the highest level of security. Dr. Ryan Parker and his team had been working in secret laboratories hidden in deep space for the past 20 years. What they had built would change everything, but First Earth needed to buy some time. Communications Officer Lisa Grant turned to face Morrison from her station. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel as reports came in from across the solar system. Luna Base had finished moving all civilians into the underground shelters that had been built in secret over the past 5 years. Mars Station reported that their population was also safe in hidden bunkers beneath the red planet's surface. "Sir, the fleet is assembled and ready for your orders," Grant said as she handed Morrison a datapad. On the screen were the names of 12 ships that made up humanity's entire space navy. Most of them had been mining vessels or research ships before the crisis began. Teams of engineers had worked day and night to add weapons and armor to anything that could fly in space. Morrison looked at the list and felt both pride and sadness. The USS Defiance was the only ship built from the ground up as a warship. The others were brave civilian crews who had volunteered to fight even though they knew the odds were terrible. Against an enemy that controlled hundreds of star systems, 12 ships seemed like nothing. The USS Portland had been an asteroid mining ship before Captain Stone and his crew turned it into a weapon. The USS Thunder started life as a cargo hauler before Captain Carter added missile launchers and energy cannons. Every ship had a story of ordinary people doing extraordinary things when their world needed them most. Admiral Vextar received the human response to his ultimatum and laughed out loud. Instead of surrendering like every other species had done, the humans wanted to fight. They challenged the collective to what they called honorable combat between their fleets. How amusing that such a primitive species still believed in old-fashioned ideas like honor and fair fighting. The Admiral decided he would grant their request before he destroyed their world. It would be entertaining to watch their pathetic little fleet try to fight against the most powerful navy in the galaxy. He would bring 50 ships to make sure the lesson was clear to any other species who might think about resisting the collective. Morrison stood in his ready room and looked out the window at Earth hanging in space like a blue and white jewel. His wife and 2 children were down there in one of the underground cities, waiting to see if Daddy would come home. He had not told them the truth about how dangerous this mission would be. The plan was simple on paper, but terrifying to think about. Earth's 12 ships would meet the alien fleet in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. They would fight as hard as they could and hopefully destroy enough enemy ships to make the collective think twice about attacking Earth. If they lost, then the aliens would probably destroy the planet anyway. But Morrison had one advantage that the aliens knew nothing about. Dr. Parker's secret project was not just about new weapons and better armor. The real breakthrough was something called Protocol 7, and if it worked, it might give humanity a chance to survive what was coming. Lieutenant Commander Ben Hayes came into the ready room carrying a sealed envelope marked with red warning labels. Inside were the final orders from Earth Command, and Morrison's hands shook slightly as he opened it. The message was short and to the point. All civilian populations were safe in the shelters, and the fleet was authorized to use any means necessary to protect Earth. Morrison walked back onto the bridge and looked at his crew. These were the best and brightest people that humanity had to offer. They came from every country on Earth, and they all shared one thing in common. They would rather die fighting than live as slaves to an alien empire. All ships report ready for departure, Grant announced as the last of the supply shuttles returned to their bases. The moment had come to leave Earth's orbit and travel to the asteroid belt, where they would face an enemy that had never known defeat. Morrison sat down in his captain's chair and gave the order that would begin humanity's first war among the stars. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. Take us to the belt and prepare for combat. Today we show the galaxy that humans will never surrender. The 12 ships of Earth's fleet turned away from their home world and began the journey that would change the fate of every human being alive. Behind them, Earth continued to spin in space, looking peaceful and defenseless. The aliens had no idea what was waiting for them in the cold darkness between the planets. The asteroid belt stretched out like a frozen graveyard between Mars and Jupiter. Chunks of rock and metal drifted in the darkness, some as small as houses and others as large as cities. This cold, empty place would become the battlefield where humanity made its first stand against an alien empire that had never known defeat. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance and watched as his small fleet took position among the asteroids. 12 ships against 50 sounded like suicide, but Morrison had learned long ago that numbers were not everything in war. The element of surprise and the willingness to sacrifice everything could sometimes overcome impossible odds. Admiral Vexitar arrived with his fleet exactly when he said he would. 50 crystal ships appeared out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their hulls glowing with captured starlight. Each ship was beautiful in its own deadly way, designed by a race that had turned war into an art form over thousands of years of conquest. The collective ships moved forward slowly, as if they were taking a casual walk through space rather than heading into battle. Vexitar wanted the humans to see the full power of his fleet and understand how hopeless their situation was. He broadcast a final message offering them one last chance to surrender and serve the collective as slaves. Morrison's response was broadcast on all frequencies so that every ship in both fleets could hear it. Admiral Vexitar, humanity rejects your offer. We would rather die free than live as your property. If you want our world, you will have to take it over our dead bodies. The first shots of the war came from the alien fleet. Beams of pure energy lanced through space and struck the hull of the USS Thunder. Captain Steve Carter felt his ship shake under the impact, but the new neutronium armor held. The humans had spent years developing defenses against energy weapons, and their work was about to be tested in the most brutal way possible. Morrison gave the order to return fire, and 12 human ships opened up with everything they had. Missiles streaked through space trailing fire while energy cannons sent beams of destruction toward the alien formation. The battle for Earth had begun, and there would be no retreat. The USS Portland took heavy damage early in the fight. Captain Stone's ship had been a mining vessel before the war, and even with new armor and weapons, it was not built for this kind of punishment. Explosions rocked the ship as alien fire found weak spots in the hull. Stone knew his ship would not survive much longer. Communications Officer Lisa Grant looked up from her station with worry in her eyes. "Sir, Captain Stone is requesting permission to initiate Protocol 7. She said in a voice that tried to stay calm but could not hide her fear. Morrison closed his eyes for a moment. Protocol 7 was the most secret part of their battle plan. It was also the most terrible. He opened his eyes and looked directly at Grant. "Permission granted. Tell Captain Stone it has been an honor to serve with him." The USS Portland suddenly changed course and accelerated directly toward the collective flagship. The alien crew watched in confusion as the human ship flew straight at them without firing a single shot. They thought the humans had finally lost their minds and were trying to ram them in a fit of desperation. Captain Stone stood on his bridge and watched the alien ship grow larger and larger on the main screen. His crew had evacuated to the escape pods, but Stone had stayed behind to make sure everything went according to plan. In his hand, he held a small device with a single red button that would change the course of the war. At the last possible moment before impact, Stone pressed the button and the USS Portland disappeared in a flash of light brighter than a star. The experimental fusion core at the heart of the ship had been modified to create a controlled implosion instead of an explosion. The result was a tiny black hole that lasted for only a few seconds, but in those seconds, it tore 3 collective ships apart and badly damaged 5 others. Admiral Vextar felt something he had not experienced in over 300 years of military service. Fear. These humans were not the primitive savages his intelligence reports had described. They were willing to sacrifice their lives in ways that seemed impossible to understand. No civilized species would destroy their own ships just to damage their enemy. But the real shock was yet to come, as the alien fleet tried to recover from the loss of their ships. Captain Morrison smiled and spoke 4 words that would be remembered for as long as humans existed. All ships, execute revelation. The remaining 11 human ships suddenly began to change. What had looked like solid hulls started to split apart along hidden seams. The USS Defiance opened up like a flower blooming in space, and 5 smaller ships emerged from inside where there had been one before. Around the battlefield, the same thing happened to every human vessel. Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster found herself in command of the USS Vengeance, one of the ships that had been hidden inside the USS Thunder. Her hands moved over unfamiliar controls as weapon systems came online that were more advanced than anything the aliens had ever seen. Around her, 59 other ships did the same thing. The collective had prepared to fight 12 primitive ships. Instead, they now faced 60 vessels that were more advanced than their own, and operated by crews who had trained for years in secret. Every human ship was equipped with weapons that used principles of physics the aliens had never encountered. Admiral Vextar watched his perfect formation fall apart as human ships attacked from every direction at once. The enemy moved with impossible coordination, as if they shared a single mind. Later, he would learn that human quantum communication systems allowed all 60 ships to share tactical information instantly across any distance. Captain Carter used his ship's experimental phase drive to materialize inside a collective cruiser's shield matrix. The alien crew had barely enough time to scream before his close-range weapons tore their ship apart from the inside. Commander Kate Williams led a squadron of fast attack ships in hit-and-run strikes that appeared and disappeared like ghosts in the asteroid field. But the most terrifying discovery came when the aliens managed to destroy their first human ship. Instead of breaking apart like a normal vessel, the damaged sections separated and transformed into smaller independent fighting craft. What had appeared to be one ship became 6 deadly interceptors that continued to fight even after their mother ship was gone. The battle lasted for 6 hours, and when it was over, only 15 collective ships were left alive to limp away from Jupiter. The humans had lost 8 vessels, but had completely destroyed 35 enemy ships and damaged most of the survivors. Admiral Vextar's proud fleet had been shattered by an enemy they had dismissed as harmless primitives. As the surviving alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, Morrison allowed himself a moment of pride. Phase 1 of Earth's defense plan was complete. The galaxy now knew that humanity would fight and that they possessed technology and tactics that could defeat even the mighty collective. But Morrison also knew this was just the beginning. News of this battle would spread across the galaxy, and every hostile species would want to test themselves against the newcomers from Earth. Humanity had won their first battle, but the real war was about to begin. Admiral Vextar sat in his command chair aboard his damaged flagship and tried to understand what had happened at Jupiter. His crystal skin had turned from bright blue to a sickly gray color that showed his fear and confusion. The greatest fleet, commander in collective history, had been defeated by a species that should not have been able to build anything more dangerous than chemical rockets. The reports from his surviving ship commanders made no sense. The humans had used weapons that bent the laws of physics and tactics that seemed to predict enemy movements before they happened. Their ships could phase through solid matter, and their communication systems worked faster than light itself. How could a primitive species develop such advanced technology? On Earth, President Karen Mitchell stood before the World Assembly and spoke to representatives from every nation. Behind her, a large screen showed images from the battle at Jupiter, including footage of human ships transforming and alien vessels being destroyed. The room was completely silent, as world leaders absorbed the reality of what they had just witnessed. "My fellow humans," President Mitchell began, "yesterday we proved to the galaxy that Earth will never surrender to alien invaders. But what you have seen today is only a small part of our true capabilities. For 20 years, we have been preparing for this moment, and now the time has come to reveal the full extent of our defenses." Dr. Ryan Parker walked through the corridors of the secret military base hidden beneath the mountains of Colorado. The walls were lined with monitors showing construction activity at shipyards scattered across the outer solar system. Hundreds of people worked around the clock building the weapons that would protect humanity from its enemies among the stars. General Alex Thompson and Admiral Susan Clark waited for Parker in the main briefing room along with dozens of other military leaders. These were the people who had planned and executed humanity's greatest deception, and now they would learn just how successful their efforts had been over the past 2 decades. Parker activated the main display, and star charts filled the room showing the positions of human fleets throughout the solar system and beyond. Red dots marked the locations of battle groups that had been built in secret, while the rest of the galaxy believed Earth could barely reach its own moon. "Ladies and gentlemen," Parker said as he pointed to the display, "the first battle group that fought at Jupiter was our oldest and smallest fleet. It was designed to test our new technologies and prove that human ships could defeat collective vessels in direct combat. That mission has been accomplished successfully." Colonel Danny Brooks, who had led the fighter squadrons during the Jupiter battle, raised his hand and asked the question that everyone in the room was thinking. "Doctor, exactly how many more battle groups are we talking about here? The aliens are going to come back with everything they have." Parker smiled with the same expression that had terrified alien admirals across 3 star systems. "Colonel, we currently have 10 additional battle groups at various stages of deployment. Battle groups 2 through 6 are already positioned in deep space waiting for orders. Groups 7 through 11 are completing their final trials and will be ready for combat within days." The room fell completely silent as the implications of this announcement sank in. Commander Holly Price, who had been one of the heroes of Jupiter, spoke first in a voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, are you telling us that we have 11 fleets like the one that just destroyed the collective task force?" "No, Commander," Parker replied with a grin that made him look almost predatory. "I am telling you that the first battle group was our prototype fleet built with our oldest technology. Each subsequent group is larger and more advanced than the last. The 11th battle group is not just bigger than the first, it represents a completely new approach to space warfare. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the news of the collective's defeat spread like wildfire through the communication networks of dozens of alien civilizations. The hegemony of worlds called an emergency session of their ruling council. The Altarian Empire mobilized their reserve fleets. Species that had never heard of Earth suddenly began making plans to either ally with or destroy these dangerous new humans. Chancellor Mordun of the hegemony stood before his council of ministers and studied intelligence reports about the Jupiter battle. The hegemony controlled over 200 star systems and had never been seriously threatened by any enemy. But these humans had destroyed a collective fleet using technology that seemed impossible. "Ministers," the Chancellor said as he activated a holographic display, "we are facing a potential threat unlike anything in our 3,000-year history. These humans have demonstrated capabilities that exceed our understanding of physics, and their willingness to sacrifice themselves in battle suggests a level of fanaticism that makes them extremely dangerous." Defense Minister Koreth stepped forward and pointed to tactical analysis of the human ships. "Chancellor, our scientists believe that the human vessels use some form of quantum entanglement for communication and coordination. Their weapons appear to manipulate matter at the subatomic level, and their defensive systems can phase shift between dimensions." The council chamber erupted in worried discussions as ministers tried to understand the implications of facing an enemy with such advanced technology. The hegemony's own scientists had been working on quantum weapons for decades without success, yet these humans seemed to have mastered the technology completely. Back on Earth, Captain Eric Johnson received sealed orders to take the second battle group to the Vega system. His fleet consisted of 85 ships, each one larger and more powerful than anything in the first battle group. The mission was not to fight a battle, but to send a message that would be heard across the entire galaxy. Johnson stood on the bridge of the USS Destiny and looked out at his fleet assembled in formation around him. Every ship was a masterpiece of human engineering built with technologies that pushed the boundaries of what was thought possible. The crews had trained for years in secret, preparing for the day when they would reveal themselves to the galaxy. The second battle group engaged their quantum phase drives and disappeared from normal space. They would travel to Vega not through hyperspace like other species, but through dimensions that most aliens did not even know existed. When they arrived, they would demonstrate to the galaxy that the Jupiter battle had been just a preview of human capabilities. On the bridge of his crippled flagship, Admiral Vextar received a message from Collective High Command, ordering him to return to the capital immediately. He would face a tribunal for his failure at Jupiter and possibly lose his rank and position. But Vexatar knew that his disgrace was nothing compared to the threat these humans represented to the entire collective. As his ship limped toward home, Vextar composed a report that would shake the foundations of the greatest empire in the galaxy. The humans were not primitives who had gotten lucky in one battle. They were a species that had somehow developed technology decades ahead of everyone else while pretending to be helpless newcomers to space travel. The deception had been perfect and complete. While the galaxy's great powers had ignored Earth as an irrelevant backwater world, the humans had been building fleets that could challenge any enemy. The question now was not whether humanity could defend itself, but how far their ambitions extended beyond their own solar system. Dr. Parker stood in his laboratory and watched the final components being installed in the 11th Battle Group's flagship. The USS Terra Nova was more than just a warship. It was a mobile construction facility capable of building new fleets while traveling between stars. With vessels like this, humanity would never again have to hide their true strength from anyone. News of the collective's defeat at Jupiter traveled through the galaxy faster than the speed of light itself. Quantum communication networks carried the impossible story to every corner of known space. The humans, a species that most aliens had never heard of, had somehow destroyed Admiral Vexitar's fleet using technology that seemed to defy the laws of physics. On the collective capital world of Zephyr Prime, the ruling council convened an emergency session to discuss what had happened. The great crystal spires of their city stretched toward the sky like frozen lightning, while inside the council chamber, the most powerful beings in their empire tried to understand how their greatest admiral had been defeated by primitives. Admiral Vexitar stood before the council stripped of his rank and uniform. His crystal skin had turned almost black with shame and fear. For 300 years he had served the collective faithfully and had never lost a single battle. Now he faced disgrace and exile because of a species that should not have been able to build anything more dangerous than chemical rockets. Former Admiral Vextar, spoke the council leader in a voice like breaking glass. You will explain to this body how 50 ships of the collective fleet were defeated by 12 human vessels. Your report claims they possessed weapons and defenses beyond our understanding. Vextar's voice cracked as he tried to describe what he had witnessed at Jupiter. The human ships that split apart to reveal hidden fleets inside them. The weapons that could phase through shields and armor. The coordination that seemed to predict every move his ships would make before they made it. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Karen Mitchell met with the leaders of every major nation to discuss humanity's next steps. The world had united like never before in the face of an alien threat, but now they faced new challenges. How should they deal with other alien species who might want to test themselves against human defenses? In the secret military base beneath, Colorado Dr. Ryan Parker briefed the senior command staff about the true extent of human fleet capabilities. The walls of the briefing room were covered with star charts showing the positions of battle groups throughout the solar system and in deep space beyond. The first battle group's victory at Jupiter was exactly what we hoped for, Parker explained to General Thompson and Admiral Clark. The galaxy now knows that humans can fight and win against superior numbers, but they still believe that we only have one small fleet. Colonel Brooks studied the tactical displays showing the positions of the other battle groups. Dr. The aliens are going to come back with everything they have. Are we ready for a full-scale invasion? Parker's smile was cold and calculating. Colonel, the beauty of our deception is that we have been preparing for exactly this scenario for 20 years. Every major alien power is about to learn that the Jupiter battle was not a lucky victory, but a carefully planned demonstration of our capabilities. In the Vega system, Captain Eric Johnson received orders to make contact with the hegemony of worlds. The second battle group would not be fighting a battle this time. Instead, they would be delivering a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. Johnson stood on the bridge of the USS Destiny and looked out at his fleet of 85 ships. Each vessel was larger and more advanced than anything that had fought at Jupiter. The crews had trained for years in secret learning to operate weapons and systems that pushed the boundaries of known science. The hegemony's grand fleet was all ready, waiting when the humans arrived at Centauri Prime. 300 ships arranged in perfect formation around their capital world. Chancellor Morden had come to witness what he expected would be humanity's surrender after their brief moment of glory against a single collective squadron. Instead, the Chancellor watched in growing horror as space itself began to ripple and bend. The human ships did not emerge from hyperspace like normal vessels. They materialized out of quantum phase shifts, appearing simultaneously across a 1,000-kilometer front, in a display of technology that seemed impossible. Captain Johnson's flagship, the USS Destiny, was twice the size of the largest hegemony dreadnought, and its hull seemed to bend light around itself like a living shadow. When Chancellor Morden demanded to know human intentions, Johnson's response was broadcast across every communication network in the sector. Chancellor Morden, 3 weeks ago, your government threatened to destroy Earth if we did not surrender to alien rule. Today, I want to show you exactly what we have been building, while you assumed we were helpless primitives hiding behind our moon. Behind the second battle group, space began to ripple again. Then again and again as more fleets materialized in perfect formation. The third battle group appeared with 120 ships, each one larger than anything in the second. Then came the fourth, with 160 vessels that seemed to absorb light itself. The fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th battle groups followed in sequence. Each fleet was more advanced than the last, representing decades of secret research and development. Chancellor Morden found himself staring at nearly 800 human warships arranged in formations that stretched across hundreds of thousands of kilometers. But Captain Johnson was not finished with his demonstration. The largest ripple yet appeared in space, and from it emerged something that defied every assumption about space warfare. The 11th battle group consisted of a single massive structure nearly 30 kilometers long and 5 kilometers wide. "Chancellor," Johnson said in a voice that remained perfectly calm despite the chaos he was creating, "what you are seeing represents 10 of our active battle groups plus our newest addition. These fleets are currently deployed across this region of space protecting human interests." The massive vessel that Johnson had called the USS Terra Nova began to demonstrate capabilities that made the Chancellor's blood run cold. Construction bays along its hull opened and began extruding new ships like a factory producing toys. In minutes, dozens of fully armed vessels joined the formation. "The Terra Nova is not just a ship," Johnson continued. "She is a mobile construction facility capable of building entire fleets while traveling between stars. We no longer need to hide our shipyards in remote systems when we can carry them with us wherever we go." Chancellor Morden's response came through the communication systems as barely a whisper. "How long have you been preparing for this confrontation? How long have you been deceiving us about your true capabilities?" Johnson's answer became the most quoted statement in galactic history. "Chancellor, we have been preparing for this since the first human looked up at the night sky and wondered what was waiting for us among the stars. We just needed someone to give us a reason to stop hiding." The demonstration at Centauri Prime was broadcast live across the galaxy by news networks and intelligence services. Within hours, every major government knew that humanity possessed not one small fleet, but nearly 1,000 ships organized into battle groups that could challenge any enemy. On Zephyr Prime, the Collective Council watched the recordings in stunned silence. The species they had dismissed as primitive savages possessed a military force larger and more advanced than their own. Worse still, the humans had managed to build and deploy this fleet while the entire galaxy believed they were helpless newcomers to space travel. Similar scenes played out in the capitals of dozens of alien civilizations. The Altarian Empire called an emergency session of their war council. The Andromedan Confederacy began drafting surrender terms. Species that had ruled their regions of space for thousands of years suddenly realized they were facing an enemy. that could crush them without breaking stride. Dr. Parker stood in his laboratory and watched the reports flooding in from intelligence networks across the galaxy. The demonstration at Centauri Prime had achieved exactly what he had hoped. Every hostile alien government was now reconsidering their plans to attack Earth, but Parker knew this was still just the beginning. The 11 battle groups that had revealed themselves represented only a fraction of humanity's true military capabilities. The real fleets were still hidden in deep space, waiting for the day when they would be needed to defend not just Earth, but human colonies that were already being established around distant stars. General Thompson joined Parker in the observation deck overlooking the construction bays, where new ships were being built every day. "Doctor, do you think our demonstration will be enough to prevent a full-scale war?" Parker's expression was thoughtful as he considered the question. "General, I believe we have bought ourselves time to establish a stronger position. But species that have ruled the galaxy for millennia are not going to accept human dominance without testing our resolve at least once more." The galaxy had never seen anything like the events at Centauri Prime. In a single day, humanity had revealed nearly 800 warships organized into battle groups that surpassed the technology of every known civilization. News networks broadcast the images continuously, while government leaders held emergency meetings to discuss how to respond to this new power that had emerged from nowhere. On the collective homeworld of Zephyr Prime, former Admiral Vextar watched the recordings from his prison cell. The humans had not just defeated his fleet at Jupiter, they had been playing a game so complex that no one in the galaxy had understood the rules. While everyone assumed Earth was a helpless backwater world, the humans had been building an armada that could challenge any empire. Chancellor Morden of the Hegemony sat in his private chambers staring at tactical analyses of the human demonstration. His military advisors had calculated that the 11 battle groups possessed enough firepower to destroy every hegemony world within a matter of days. The species he had threatened to enslave now held the power to wipe his entire civilization from existence. But across the galaxy, other alien leaders were drawing different conclusions from the human revelation. Emperor Draxion of the Altarian Empire studied the recordings and saw not an insurmountable threat, but an opportunity. If his forces could capture even a few human ships and reverse engineer their technology, the Altarian Empire could become the dominant power in the galaxy, on Earth. President Mitchell addressed the world once more from the United Nations building in New York. Behind her screen showed images of human fleets deployed throughout local space, while representatives from every nation listened to her words with a mixture of pride and fear about what the future might bring. "My fellow humans," the president began, "today marks the end of our species' childhood. We have revealed ourselves to the galaxy as a force that cannot be ignored or dismissed. But with this power comes great responsibility. We must decide not just how to defend ourselves, but what kind of civilization we want to become among the stars." Deep beneath the Colorado mountains, Dr. Parker met with the secret council that had planned humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage. The room was filled with military leaders, scientists, and politicians who had worked for decades to prepare for this moment. Now they faced decisions that would shape the future of human civilization. "Ladies and gentlemen," Parker announced as he activated the main display, "our demonstration at Centauri Prime has achieved its primary objective. Every major alien government is now aware that humanity possesses significant military capabilities. But our intelligence networks are reporting that some species are already planning to test our resolve." Admiral Clark studied the tactical reports flowing in from human intelligence assets throughout the galaxy. "Doctor, we are detecting military buildups in at least 6 different sectors. The Altarians are mobilizing their battle fleets, and the Andromedan Confederacy is calling up their reserve forces." Parker nodded grimly. "This was always a possibility. Some species will choose to test themselves against us rather than accept the new balance of power. That is why we prepared for Phase 2 of our emergence plan." In the Altarian capital, Emperor Draxion stood before his assembled war council and outlined his strategy for dealing with the human threat. The Altarian Empire controlled over 400 star systems and possessed the largest military force in their region of space. Surely these upstart humans could not stand against the combined might of the Empire's 1,000-ship armadas. "Generals," the Emperor declared as he pointed to star charts showing human fleet positions, These humans may have surprised the weak collective and frightened the cowardly hegemony, but they have not faced the battle-tested warriors of the Altarian Empire. We will crush their fleets and take their technology for ourselves. But Emperor Draxion had made the same mistake as every other alien leader who had underestimated humanity. He assumed that the 11 battle groups revealed at Centauri Prime represented the full extent of human military power. The truth was far more terrifying than any alien government could have imagined. Captain Johnson received new orders while his second battle group maintained position near Centauri Prime. The Bata message was simple and direct. Proceed to the Altarian border and prepare to demonstrate Phase 2 capabilities. The Emperor had made his choice, and humanity would respond accordingly. The USS Destiny and her escort fleet moved toward Altarian space using their quantum phase drives to travel faster than any conventional propulsion system. Behind them, space began to ripple as additional fleets prepared to join what would become known as the Revelation War. Admiral Jake Morrison, now commanding the entire First Fleet from his new flagship, watched as his expanded battle group took position along the Altarian frontier. The USS Defiance had been rebuilt and upgraded with the latest human technology, making it even more formidable than the ship that had fought at Jupiter. Emperor Draxion's invasion fleet consisted of 2,000 ships organized into 4 massive armadas. It was the largest military force ever assembled in this region of the galaxy, and the Emperor was confident that sheer numbers would overwhelm whatever defenses the humans could muster. The Altarian fleet emerged from hyperspace expecting to face the 11 human battle groups that had been revealed at Centauri Prime. Instead, they found themselves confronting a sight that would haunt their nightmares for generations to come. Space itself seemed to be alive with human ships materializing from quantum phase dimensions in formations that stretched across entire star systems. Captain Johnson's voice echoed across every communication frequency in the sector as more and more human fleets continued to appear. Emperor Draxion, you have chosen to test humanity's resolve. We accept your challenge, and we want you to understand exactly what you are facing. The human fleets that materialized around the Altarian invasion force represented capabilities that no alien species had even dreamed possible. The Terra Nova and her sister ships began producing new vessels at an incredible rate, while battle groups that dwarfed anything seen before took position in perfect formations. Emperor, Johnson continued as the demonstration reached its climax. What you have seen until now represents our local defense forces. These are the fleets we use to protect our home systems. You are about to meet our deep-range battle groups. From the deepest regions of space where no alien sensors had ever penetrated came fleets that had been building and training in secret for over a generation. Ships the size of small moons accompanied by escort vessels that numbered in the thousands. Construction platforms that could build entire worlds and weapon systems that could reshape matter at the quantum level. Emperor Draxion watched his invasion force being surrounded by human ships that seemed to fill every cubic meter of space for light years in every direction. His tactical officers reported contact with over 10,000 human vessels, and more were still appearing from dimensions that